Hi, everyone. This is Norman Koshnek from Eyes on Cricket with Norman Koshnek. I'm very, very fortunate to I've got two esteemed guests from two sides of the world. Deep Dasgupta is all the way from Ahmedabad. Thank you for coming, Deep. And we've got David Graveney all the way from, well, not so sunny England. Is it sunny there? What's the story, David?
We had a sunny weekend. Now it's freezing cold again. So we're back to where we were.
So when I ask you about today, you tell me about the weekend. That's interesting.
Yeah. It was nice and sunny. So all the blossom has come out on the trees. So they're completely confused because it's now gone back to being really cold. So.
Oh, well, in Australia, it's now meant to be autumn, but it's still hot. It was close to 30 degrees Celsius. So that.
Yeah.
So thank you both for coming on. I'll just explain to the viewers, Catherine McGregor is not here. She has been precluded from going on by her channel, Sky News in Australia, which is a superb channel, but they've got a contract with her that she can't go on other channels, which is, she thought she could, but she can't. They actually had Ian Chappell on her show from Channel 9. There was some positives there, but anyway, Catherine McGregor's show, The McGregor Angle, is on in Australia and will actually be a reciprocation of both mine and hopefully the likes of India and England as well. We'd like to get you two lovely gentlemen onto her show in the future. In fact, Deep, do you know Harini Rana? Do you know Harini Rana?
Yeah. Harini.
She was on the show too, and I was on her show over the summer, and it was a really good broadcast and has great coverage within Australia. So we like to reciprocate in that manner. So we'll thank her for that. So both of you, we've obviously been entangled in a very interesting test series. Been a lot of discussion around, well, in fact, quite positively, England played very well in the first, and we've got led into further two tests where India gained the ascendancy. I'm not going to harp on the pitch because I think that's been well and truly done to death. I love the way Viv Richards came out in the press only the last few days and said, get on with it, and I agree with him. I think that it's something of an issue where I think it's immaterial if both teams are playing the same pitch. The conditions are the same for both. They prepare as they always do. And I think, David, you told me about what Graham Gooch told you. What did you say, David?
Well, he was half joking. He said that relations deep between English captains, whether it be county cricket or whether it be more county cricket than international cricket. And sometimes you would lean yourself to, if you don't really get on with the groundsman, to actually tell him the opposite in terms of, so because he doesn't like you as a bloke, he'll go the opposite way, which is actually what you want. So it's a sort of reading somebody's mind. But I think Norman, you're right that things have moved on. The players have said, what's done is done. Let's get on with the next game, and that's whether it's Ravi Ashwin saying that or Jack Leach saying that. Hasn't been any batsmen saying it, but
No.
But that's the world over, venues have their characteristics. So you wouldn't expect to go to you wouldn't go to India unless you're playing probably up north a little bit, Mohali. Everywhere else it'll spin. That's the asset of. Well, it's not the asset of Indian cricket, because I think Indians have got some really good seam bowlers that have, and that was the balancing factor in Australia, and even that wasn't their first string seamers. So I think they have got a really well balanced squad, as have England. Side on the day played better than the other side. Let's move on to the next venue. Masses to play for on both sides, so it should be a really exciting game.
Well, I must commend you, David, because David's been making some great comments. Having been a chairman of selectors, he has a very good handle on the way selection pans out. And again, it's, you don't dwell, you move on. Because if you dwell too long, you'll get caught up.
Otherwise, the opposition will feed off that they'll say in their dressing room, actually, they're still talking about the last game. So they're a very ripe sort of opponent to take advantage of. One of England's strengths at the moment is the strength of the two captains, whether it be Owen Morgan in the one-day game or whether it be Joe Root in the test matches. And I think that they are what I would describe as old-fashioned captains. What they say goes in the dressing room. And I think the coaches stand back from that And I sense that's actually the case with Ravi. I think that he stands in the background and lets the respective captains get on and run their teams, which is the right way.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, there's a comment here about you, Deep, and you know very well what StreamYard's all about. There's a lot of commentary.
Yeah.
They're saying that you're very hardworking. Now, you are certainly hardworking.
Thank you. And I mean, listen, and this bubble doesn't help either. I mean, that's all you've got to do. We've been here in Ahmedabad for the last 10 days, and unfortunately, we've just had 2 days of game here. So it is what it is. But as David mentioned, I think one of the biggest challenges when you're touring outside your country is, mentally accepting the conditions and moving on and not complaining about it. It is what it is. I mean, when Indian, we go to England, I mean, we don't expect runners. We expect the ball to steam around and swing. We go to Australia, we expect the ball to bounce. If it happens otherwise, that'll be surprising. Same way, when teams come over to the subcontinent, you expect the ball to turn up. And I don't know. I mean, obviously, David's been part of the cricket setup for so long. The other important thing is, of late, we're so used to seeing flat pitches especially for white ball cricket. Now the ball seams around a bit or swings around a bit or it turns. Suddenly everything is so exaggerated. I mean, the ball would turn in the subcontinent 50 years ago as well, and it would seam in England and bounce in Australia 50 years ago as well. But suddenly, because we're so used to white ball cricket and playing on flat pitches, that a little bit of that, and suddenly we kind of overdo all that. That's my take on it as well.
And I think Deep's right. I think if you're talking about white ball cricket, I think the worst thing that was done was to have a new ball from either end, because it negates what happens at the other end in terms of reverse swing. So basically, the bowlers are at the mercy of the batsman for 50 overs, and I said to Norman before we came on air, to watch a game where 500 plays 500, is that a good wicket? I would suggest it's not a good wicket. The game needs to be played, and there are extremes. There's always going to be extremes, but where every ball and every run is vital, is electric viewing for everyone. So that is, if it was 300 runs a day and there's a whole innings in that, I see that as being a really exciting test match. And I'm of an age that in the UK I played on uncovered wickets, and actually I watched a program yesterday with Nasser Hussain talking about cricket in Mumbai, and they were talking about a guy who practiced, or Sunil Gavaskar practiced on uncovered wickets in a preparation for an England tour. And I happened to be talking to somebody this morning and playing against Derek Underwood, where the Kents had got over 300 on a Saturday, rained on a Sunday. We had this rather odd thing, where we played the Sunday league game in the middle of a three-day game. Came back on the Monday, drying pitches. I was the night watchman. First ball I faced from Derek Underwood hit me on the shoulder. We were in our cars by tea time. We lost 19 wickets in about 3 hours. But that was the luck of the draw, really, the rub of the green. You would have it the other way round, because uncovered wickets produce that sort of thing. You never thought about putting anybody in. You just batted because you knew it was going to rain at some stage. So absolutely, there are different, and you had to learn how to play on uncovered wickets and also bowl on uncovered wickets, because if you didn't bowl people out as a spinner on uncovered wickets, there'd be somebody else. Taking your place pretty quickly. So, it was a different pressure. So pleasing to see from the players in particular is, let's move on to the next game because there's so much to play for both teams.
There was something funny. I think there's a tournament going on in India of cricket legends. I think it's the Road Safety Series.
That's right.
And that includes obviously Kevin Pietersen, the captain of England, but Monty Panesar was there. Monty was joking with me saying he's been selected for England. He's about to go and play for England when he's going to India. Before I realised about the series, he was trying to mock that he was playing for England, which was quite interesting. A bit of a comedy there. I mean, could be strange.
Are India playing in this tournament?
Yeah, India too is playing. I mean, I think Sachin is playing, and I think Brian is playing for West Indies. Obviously, you have KP and all coming over as well. Yeah, I think there's a team from Bangladesh and a team from Sri Lanka as well playing the Masters. Yeah.
Yeah,
it's excellent. It's a great idea.
I've seen the England team. I think the words, I will not wish the greatest respect to some of the England teams. The word legend doesn't necessarily apply. You've had one cap. So.
Well, maybe they're legends in their own lifetime, perhaps.
Well, yeah, I did play. I did play in a over 40s team. Was played about years and years ago, and the West Indies were in transition at that time. And first of all, I can remember the changing rooms being a bit like a war zone. Because if you played for Pakistan, then the moment you finish playing international cricket, that's it. You don't play again. You don't go back to playing domestic cricket. And I was 12th man, taking some gloves out to Graham Gooch, and he said, "Well, this is like playing the first team," because Marshall was playing, Sylvester Clarke. Their batting lineup was Greenwich, Haynes, Richards. They all played. This was supposed to be a sort of retirement job, so he had to be on his guard. Let's put it like that.
Well, you've got Chris Gale playing still for West Indies at 41, haven't you, in the current series against Sri Lanka? Yeah, which is interesting.
Yeah, well, he's still box office the way that he plays. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
David, can I ask you something? I mean, listen, you've been the chairman of selection for so long for England. What's your take on this whole rotation policy and workload management and all that? What's your take?
Well, as Norman's alluded to, I think the playing schedules of some of the countries are ridiculous is the wrong word, because you wouldn't agree to it unless everybody bought into it. But they seem to be playing a lot of cricket, and they're also playing a lot of back-to-back pressurized cricket. I can remember talking to my uncle when he went on tour. They used to have, the terminology in Australia was up-country games, where they played the States, and then when the test matches, the other players went off and played another game between test matches. I think that puts a lot of pressure on selection, because you're carrying a big squad, and the big squad in this situation is the fact that because of COVID, the quarantine periods of people coming in and out, making it really, really difficult. You'd have the greatest sympathy for Chris Wokes, who's been to South Africa, been to Sri Lanka, been to India, has never crossed the white line yet. So I can understand why they're doing it, Deep, but it does. I think it needs people to understand the pressure of the bio bubble you're experiencing as a journalist, and what that does in terms of the teams. And it is a logistical nightmare, really, trying to transport people in and out. And it only takes one person like Mo and Ali to be ill. Then the person who was sitting next to, like Chris Wokes, he also was then put in quarantine. So these are really unusual times. So I can understand when people are slightly scratching their heads, but this is possibly. And it is difficult if you with the best will in the world, if you're making a plan to relieve players and give people a rest from a bio bubble point of view, it looks a bit odd if somebody has a really good game and then he's due to go home and then come back again. But these guys have to play a lot of cricket, and the England players have been in a bio bubble for quite a long time. If you factor in the English summer as well, so I think everybody has to be a little bit sympathetic around how that is, and I'm sure in a normal world, Deep, it wouldn't be quite as illogical is the wrong word. It wouldn't be as it is at the present stage. So I can understand where they're coming from. I think it's a real challenge in terms of management to make that work.
So in the case where, example, Wokes has gone home, correct?
Yeah.
The fact is, if that can they change that, or is it preordained and that's it, Or
No,
could
I
they
think,
make
that,
it?
I think they can. I think they can change. You know, if you had suddenly an outbreak and you'd have to bring some people back, it's the quarantine bit is the thing that causes the real issue, and the fact that you can't practice then puts a lot of pressure on selection. So it seems to me you've either got to be injured. And, you know, the Indians have had, Sammy's been injured. You know, all the seamers were struck down in one go virtually. So I think they're doing a really good job, and I think people really have to understand that we've actually got live sport on TV from wherever it is in the world, and the effort it takes to put on these matches.
Yeah,
So.
absolutely. Yeah,
And also
absolutely.
they've got crowds, which is, I'm sure the players are really excited by that. So.
Yeah, my only take was I completely agree with what David said, and it makes a lot of sense because we're talking about what England playing 17 test matches, then which includes Ashes, which includes obviously there's a World Cup here as well. There's a lot of cricket being played from here on till the end of the year. But for example, I don't know how it works out for a batsman, especially. For example, Bairstow, he was in really good nick when England was in Sri Lanka, and then he goes back home and he comes back, plays this test match, and he looks a little out of form. I mean, he hasn't played. I mean, it's very difficult to assess if you've played only 5, 6, or whatever 10 odd deliveries. But it seems that he's not in the same form. So he has to get himself back again into form. So that's my only concern. That once as a bowler, I can understand Anderson and all. I mean, they've played 100+ test matches and all that. And as far as experienced players are concerned, it might be relatively easier for them to take a break and then come back and be at their 100%. But I'm just thinking from a batsman perspective and saying, listen, I'm in good form. I don't want to miss a game right now. I just want to continue with my good form because I don't know. I take a break for a month and I come back and I might not be in the same form or same mindset like I was before.
I think I can, and I can only make reference, not my idea, but reference to a quote from Duncan Fletcher, who was a very successful coach, not only for England, also for India. Is that when you're resting players, you've got to look at what team you're going to be putting out at the end. So the end game for England is obviously so the end of this series, and who's going to be fresh there. So some of the decisions that are made at the beginning may appear to be illogical, but it's in order to make sure you've got the best team at the end of whatever the winter is. Or in England's case, you know, the schedule when they get back, and then they've got to play or preparing to go the Ashes, T20. There's just such an amazing amount of cricket, and England actually have quite an interesting embarrassment. Well, not embarrassment. They have riches in terms of blokes who can keep wicket and bat, which is not mirrored by any other team really. So, but there are young guys, for instance. There's a young lad called James Bracey who comes from my county, Gloucestershire, who's I know he's a young man and he hasn't been on a tour like this, and I'm sure he will learn a lot by watching, practicing. But it's a real hard time for a young man who's desperate to just get out there and play. So answering the question, Deep, but it may look slightly illogical from as we stand now, but there'll be rhyme and reason in order to make sure that people are fresh for as long as they possibly can be. You know, if you look at, and I'm only dwelling this briefly in terms of football, the amount of fixtures these teams are having to play, they have to rotate their players because they just can't play every single game. So that would be the explanation. Whether people think it's right or not, well, that's you respect their view, but that would be the management's view.
So, Deep, from your perspective, now that you're in Ahmedabad, you've been there for obviously the previous test, you've been a part of the series. What's your take? What's the feeling having physically been there? We can only judge from afar. What's your feeling about the conditions? Have they been appropriate in terms of the ability to train? I'm just wanting to know, because Ahmedabad is obviously a brand new stadium. There's a lot of circumstance around the opening of it. Just tell us what the feeling is like being there.
Listen, the infrastructure is absolutely fantastic. I mean, they've got there's a second ground, there's indoor facilities. The ground itself is fabulous. I think we've spoken enough about the pitch, but apart from that, it's hot here, but it's not very hot though. I mean, it's been pleasant in the mornings. Evenings again, it's pleasant. I mean, it's a span of an hour or a couple of hours in the afternoon where it can get really hot around that 1-2 p.m. in the afternoon. But apart from that, it's been kind of pleasant. Cool breeze as well. So it's not like the summer hasn't set in as yet. It's still in that autumn kind of period here in India. So it's not that bad as far as the conditions are concerned. At the stadium, it's wonderful. At the stadium, it's wonderful. But I've heard a few people talking about the hotel and stuff like that. Yeah, I mean, we're in a different hotel. The broadcasting team is in a different hotel, and the teams are in a different hotel. But yeah, I mean, we were supposed to be there, and they were supposed to be in our hotel. So I don't know, something happened, and we switched and all. But yeah, listen, you know what? One of the biggest challenges, again, I mean, that's again my personal view, is when you're traveling and all, is try and not let anything affect you, even if you don't like it, and especially when you're traveling away from home. And culturally, there's a huge difference. There is so many things which are not used to, and especially a lot of the English players are traveling maybe for the first time. They have traveled to India before with the Lions team, but as test match players, I think this is a first trip for a lot of them. But I think one of the biggest challenges is to not worry about anything, and just not let anything affect your game, because things can be challenging, and especially now. As David mentioned, I think the English players, been most of them, and quite a few of them rather, have been part of a bubble since was June, the series against West Indies. Yeah, exactly. So from June onwards, they've been in bubbles, so it can't be easy. I've been in the IPL bubble for two months plus. I'm in this bubble for almost a month now. It can't be easy because you can't go out, you can't do much. And especially, I mean, for us, it's a different thing. We're just broadcasters. But can you imagine as a player and you're not having a good series? There is no safety wall. I mean, you're there in your room, and it can be very, very difficult. I mean, you haven't scored runs and you're sitting in your room and you're sulking. You can't go out. You can't watch a movie or I don't know, just go out and have a drink or something and loosen up a bit. You can't. So this is really taxing. So. But it is what it is. I think it's going to be around for a bit longer, and I think, and that's where I think the English team is carrying a sports psychologist, if I'm not wrong, and I think that's a great idea. I think, I mean, professional sport, anyways, is so challenging, especially nowadays. The current situation, it's double the challenge. So I'm glad that the English team is carrying a sports psychologist along with them.
Is there an actual hotel attached to the ground? Sorry, Dave. Is there a hotel attached to the ground in any way?
No. The hotel where the players are staying, it's closer to the ground. There is a construction. I mean, there is a hotel coming up. It's not ready as yet. Our hotel is a little further. I think that's one of the reasons why players moved to that hotel and we moved here, because our hotel is around 45 odd minutes to the ground. But the hotels where players are staying, I think that's closer. That's around 15-20 minutes.
Okay, David, what were you going to say?
I was saying there's actually quite an interesting debate about whether people should stay in single rooms or they should actually be twins, because that changed for England quite some time ago. Where one of the chairmen of the board didn't think it was the right thing to do, but there are some benefits of having somebody else in the room. That actually, the cricket, and I can only relate to my career, that there's a lot of time when you can be on your own contemplating your performance, and you tend to look at it in a negative way than a positive way. So when you're on your own, you can do some serious damage to yourself by getting down on yourself, beating yourself up. And actually, when you've got somebody else in the room, that's actually quite a good thing, that you can talk and actually the other person can observe you, that actually if you're struggling. I think the thing to do is actually you've got to also, if you're sharing rooms, that actually you need to rotate them from time to time, because sometimes people don't get on with each other. But it's an interesting debate whether or not people should be in individual rooms, because it's a difficult thing you're talking about sports psychologists, Norman. It would be a very difficult thing for him to monitor that. So I've seen it with the under-19s where it's been left having a chat with a young under-19 player playing in a World Cup, never been to India or anything like that, come and knock on my door if you have a problem. Well, that is never going to happen. And it wouldn't actually happen in the senior team either, because it will get fed back to the captain or those who select, and people will then draw conclusions, say, well, he's not in the right state of mind to play in the game. So it all gets bottled up. So it's a challenge for everybody, whether they're playing, whether they support staff, to create the right environment more than anything else. And that's as deep as the inability to get away from the team and just have some time on your own just can't happen in that environment. So
that's an amazing dynamic. Have you had much of a chance to talk to the players? Obviously, on air you would, or depending on the situation. Have you had much of an opportunity to get a bit of an understanding of what they're going through?
Over the period of last 4 odd months or 5 months, I've been able to chat with them, some of them. It is difficult. It is definitely difficult, and it's even more difficult for the support staff, because then their job is to make sure that everyone is in the right mind space. I think that's one of the main jobs of for a support staff nowadays. So yeah, I mean it's difficult, but then everyone is finding their own ways to do things. For example, I mean the whole of today, I was just sitting next to the pool, because the pool's out of bound as well. So you can't get into the pool. You see the water there, you see the pool, but you can't get into it. You just spend the whole day next to it and watching Netflix or something.
Sorry to interrupt you. Why is it out of bounds?
Sorry?
Why is it out of bounds?
It is out of bounds because pools are not allowed. I mean, this is the regulation that you can't have access to pools. I mean, all pools all over the city and most of the cities, it's out of bounds. The pools haven't opened.
All right.
Interesting
that actually, because there's a view in the UK actually, because chlorine is in the pools, actually it makes it very difficult for transmission. But I understand the fact that people, not to be crude, will spit out into the water. They just do that by habit. So it swings and roundabouts through it. So.
Yeah. Well, now, I mean, I've got another reason not to get into the pool now, David.
Especially if David's
it's balanced. It's balanced by the chlorine. Don't worry.
Yeah, fair enough. But I'm saying, yeah. So this is tough. I mean, we are all finding our own ways of coping with it. Whether you're in the bubble or even lockdown for that matter, we're all finding our own ways, to kind of, find the new normal or find what works for us.
Would you, as a commentator, be able to bring family members with you on the tour? Is that possible?
Yes, that is possible. But again, it's the same for the family members as well. For example, I asked my wife and my kids. I mean, my elder one's got his O-level starting from April, so he can't make it. So obviously my family couldn't make it, but they would have to be part of the bubble then. They would have to follow the same protocols, be in quarantine for 5 days and not get out of the room, and then get tested every 4 days and stuff like that. So, and obviously follow the same protocols. You can't get out. We have this allocated area which is part of the bubble we have access to. So yeah, I mean everything remains the same.
Oh, look, it's just excellent that we're playing cricket, let's be honest, and rather freely, and having half capacity at Ahmedabad with 50-odd thousand is quite remarkable. It was great to see scenes before the match of people buying their tickets, going to the ground, getting their ticket from the ticket booth. It was quite brilliant, and I think that's gone really well. I think that's a very buoyant feeling for people to sit at home and see people at the ground. It just uplifts everybody through a very difficult stage. As you know, in Australia, we've been very fortunate. For example, in New Zealand currently, Andrew McDonald was talking earlier about the Australian side. They had 2 days completely off between the second and third ODI. They were able to play golf. Again, we're in New Zealand. It's a lot easier because COVID's under control. They spent time in Wellington. Admittedly, Auckland had an issue, but Wellington was fine. I mean, here in Sydney, I'm going to make you guys jealous now. We've had 43 days of 0 COVID cases. 43 days in a row. We are not wearing masks in restaurants, cafes, only on a bus and a train. Otherwise, there's no masks anywhere.
Let's move on, Norman. Thank you.
And I'm taking full advantage of course. I'm I'm running around all the restaurants, eating and drinking. No, but we are very fortunate. We don't truly comprehend how bad it is elsewhere in the world. But in both your countries, both in England and in India, it hasn't been good at all. Are you on a specific lockdown at the moment, David?
Yeah. We're there's some relaxation bit by bit. I think the main thing that was understandably is around schooling. So schools are going back on the 8th of March. So which I can assure my children are much older than that, so it doesn't apply. But there are some parents who are seriously close to doing some dreadful things. I'm jokingly, but I think they'll be quite keen. They'll love their children dearly, but home learning has challenged quite a lot of them, I think. So. And actually, children miss their friends more than anything else.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I think that's the same for adults. That's. But this is the way the world is. It'd be just interesting to see what the world looks like when everything's how it affects people in terms of how they work, how they have meetings, that sort of scenario. I think it'll have a change forever, really. So
yeah, absolutely.
See how we go, really.
Let's get back to the cricket match now, which is upon us in less than 2 days' time. Of course, we know now that England can't qualify for the World Test Championship. That's to one side. The reality is England still have a pride factor involved. They can draw the series, which is effectively a win. As Chris Verner, one of our colleagues, always says, the reality is no one would expect them to have won one Test match in the series, let alone potentially two. The reality is it's been a very good result for England, but the way that India seem to always come back in the series now, I'm not sure that you see that deep from your perspective, where a team like England, or in the case of Australia, take an early lead in the series, and then to see India fight back is a very special trait that I think Indian teams didn't really have in the years gone by. I think that's particularly interesting.
It is, and listen, I think, for example, take England for this current English side. I mean, it's a really good side. It's a fantastic side with a lot of champion players in it, and I'm sure they're gonna bounce back strong. And the best part, as I think David did touch upon it, none of the players spoke about the pitch. I mean, Joe Root, I was interviewing him post the last Test match, and he did not, and he just said the fact that it was the same for both the teams, because that's what it is. I mean, one of the biggest issue is how do you get the last match out of your head, and the last match happened to be a match which didn't end that well for the English side. But you have people like Ben Stokes and Joe Root and Anderson and Broad with that kind of experience, and that's what you need in that dressing room. You need the senior players, you need champion players, you need players who've seen a lot of success, which these experienced players in that dressing room have, and for them to bounce back and just make sure that the younger guys not carry the baggage into this Test match. I mean, that's what happened with the Indian side in Australia as well. What really happened was, with the Indian side, I believe, because they had nothing to lose. They had their backs to the wall and they had nothing to lose. They had all youngsters coming through with no baggages, players like Shiraz or Shubman Gill and all making their debuts and stuff like that. And obviously there were seniors like Pujara and Ajinkya who tasted success, who had tasted success in Australia way back in 2018 to kind of guide them. I think England, if you look at it, it's kind of the same setup. You have the experience and all the experience and success in those experienced players, and you have good youngsters like Dom Sibyl, Zach Crawley for that matter, even Ben Foakes. I think Ben Foakes is absolutely phenomenal. I just love watching him keep wickets anyways. You have all these youngsters coming through. It's just making sure that they don't carry the baggage with them. That's all they have to look after. And listen, if the pitch is a turner, and that's how I see it. For example, you give a green top to India, I think it's a 50-50 game. Same way, you give a turner to any team, for that matter, Australia or England. I mean, 2016, Australia won the first Test match in Pune on a turner. Because then what you're doing is, let's say Jack Leach is a good bowler, but he does not have the experience. But suddenly you give a turner, you kind of neutralizing the experience of Ashwin because of the surface. Then suddenly Jack Leach becomes an unplayable bowler, and you kind of neutralizing that advantage that India has. Same way, if, for example, I can't really remember India losing on a green top in last few years, because suddenly you give a green top, then Anderson and Siraj becomes almost the same kind of bowler because of the surface.
Sometimes you can make it, sort of the difference in ability narrows if the wicket does a lot. I've always been a believer, actually, that when it spins, and this is not a criticism, this is just, I think if it didn't spin that much, the better bowler is the one will succeed. The average one will not. Yeah. And I'm deep. I don't know what you think, or the chat was in the press box. I think the ball has got a lot to do with what happened. I think that the covering of the pink ball made the ball accelerate off the wicket, that actually a misjudgment of length, not spin, just length, made it really difficult to be able to play. And I think that actually the wicket, it might be the same, it might not. But I just think that the red ball will just give the batsman a little bit more time. And that's always been sort of, I think, a little bit of a difference between the Indian spinners and the England spinner. The natural speed of the Indian spinners, because they are so comfortable of coming down the wicket and using their feet, which isn't necessarily a natural thing for English batsmen to do. I think is makes Indian spinners to get the ball, and you can only normally get the ball up and down, as you will know as a distinguished coach yourself, is that you can only get it up and down if you spin the ball. And flight isn't bowling it slowly. Dip is produced because the power of spin you have on the ball. So so it'd be interesting to see how the red ball responds as opposed to the last one. I think the batsmen will find them having more time to play than they normally would expect, because they've had to fend off the pink ball, which actually was more dangerous coming into them, or non-spinning, like Axel Patel bowled brilliantly. Whereas if you're playing on a spinning wicket, and this is only in conversation with people who can play spin, and I'm not one of them, that actually they would play for the ball that's not spinning. Because and I can relate to this as a bowler. The number of wickets I got, I got 1,200 wickets or whatever. The number of balls that I got as a left-arm spinner deep, the pitch leg and hit the top of off, I could count on. There'd be less than 50 over a long career. You get your wickets by human error more than anything else, or psychologically stopping people scoring. And they get themselves all in a bit of a twitch and make a mistake. So it becomes a game of chess. And I think that ability to defend the pink ball became extremely difficult with the way that it zipped off the wicket, and also by bowlers who bowled a bit quicker. And the England spinner did tend to bowl a bit quicker. But I have this great recollection. It's not England against India. It's actually, well, it was the same tour when Monty made his debut. When he got Sachin out, they played Pakistan before, and we had a guy called Sean Udall playing because Robert Croft didn't tour. Sean Udall was a really good county bowler, lovely flowing action, and as normal with spinners, they, as captained by English captains, like bowled the last over before lunch on the first day, and he bowled to INDvsENG the last over in Lahore or wherever they play. And he blocked the first one, and the expression on his face was to say, "You can't bowl it that slow in international cricket, And this is the last over before lunch. He's never seen this bloke bowl before, and he just hit the next two straight over the side screen. So you just can't bowl it that slow. So I think how the ball reacts, I think, will be quite interesting. I must admit.
No, that's a very valid point. I mean, just look at the first Test match, and for that matter, even the second Test match. The ball did turn, it did bounce, but it gave that much more extra time for the batsman. And because the advent of DRS, a lot of batsmen are trying to play spin off the back foot. Because pad is out of the question now. We were taught growing up that pad is your second line of defense, but with DRS in, there is no pad anymore. Everything is pad. So a lot of the batsmen are trying to play spin off the back foot, and that's where the pace, as David mentioned, because of that extra lacquer on that pink ball, it just gives you that much less time to adjust off the back foot. Look at, for someone who plays spin so well, Joe Root. He got out of the back foot. Virat Kohli, back foot. How many players in the last Test match got out playing off the back foot?
Yeah.
So a lot of players do prefer playing spin off the back foot, but that pink ball and the pace does not really give you that kind of time.
I think it just speeded it up a bit. I think it surprised them, and the match situation didn't allow a lot of people to change that. And actually, to be fair, Deep, for people to suddenly change playing off the back foot, and they haven't done it for the whole of their careers, that's a really difficult thing to do. So, somebody like Zach Crawley, I can understand what he was doing. I can remember bowling, playing in a county game, and it actually was the game that ended my career mid-match. I'm bowling to Derby, and Azharuddin has got 240, and he's smashing me to all parts of the ground. I happen to get 5 wickets at the other end, English batsman, and we engaged, and he was a lovely man, and he loved talking about cricket, and he said to me, David, why does everybody get caught back padding? Because we are taught in India as young people to use the bat. All right, so you play the bat and then move the bat out of the way if the ball spins away from you. You obviously got to play if it comes in. And I said, well, how do you do that? Well, it's quite easy to do. Practice as a young person without any pads on. You get used to actually using your bat, because if you miss it with your bat, it's going to whack you straight in the shin. So, and he's right. That actually they got themselves in a position, a base, and then move from there. But to play it way out in front of you, this is a new technique that actually in England they're beginning to develop. And as Deep said, it's caused by DRS more than anything else. Because I've heard Phil Tufnell say he would have got 50% more wickets. That might have been the case. Certainly left-arm spinners have got a lot more than in the era that I played. So, because again, this is Victorian times. But the West Indies turned up and they had a guy called Ramadan bowling, who was a mystery sort of a bit like Gleeson, an Australian bowler who bowled out the front of his hand. So it was very difficult to pick whether it was a leg spinner, off spinner, because you didn't see the back of the hand in terms of a googly. So Colin Cowdrey and I think it might have been Dexter, they just kicked him away for the whole of the Test match. Now, I can remember, and I don't think Norman might have seen it, Carl Hooper used to bat like that to Shane Warne, to hide his bat behind the pad and just play forward, and trying to impress upon the umpire that was a shot. And then the umpires managed to work out actually it wasn't a shot. And then my good friend who I played with, David Shepherd, was the first person who started giving people out for hiding your bat and basically saying actually you're shouldering arms. Yeah. So it is developed, and actually everybody's caught out with Asian players actually to play with your bat is the right way forward.
Well, Pujara still he's a throwback. He uses his pad a fair bit, doesn't he, when he's batting? He's a throwback in the way he bats.
It's very tactical. I mean, if you see, he does is he takes it outside the off stump more often than not, and especially, I mean, if you think about it, where the ball is turning a lot, and especially for a right arm orthodox finger spinner. Getting a leg before on turners becomes that more difficult, because if it's turning, the idea is either the impact is outside off stump, or if the impact is within stumps, it's missing the stumps. So for a finger spinner, especially right arm finger spinner, getting a leg before, and now the booster is out of the question, right? You don't have the booster anymore. So to get a leg before, so I think he uses very, very strategically and very sensible the way he uses. Most of the time he steps out. So once he steps out, you're out. You're out of that umpire zone, the DRS zone, as they call it, the 3 meter mark. And he takes his chance. I mean, he's still, as you rightly mentioned, Norman, I think he still bats a bit like the olden days, where he does use his bat a little more than the others, I guess.
And the other point, different things, Norman. They stand outside the leg stump. They make something difficult, or they take off stump guard to say when they play forward, the leg is outside the line. But whatever, and I feel really sorry for him. I know it was an India-England Test match, But by the time Rayner finished his career and having to face Graham Swan, he genuinely did not know what to do, because he didn't know whether, bowling around the wicket into the rough, he didn't know whether it was going to turn, not turn. And actually, if he played forward trying to hide his bat, he was given out. So it is really difficult.
Yeah. And Swanee,
Rohit Sharma was someone who, sorry. Go on. I was just going to say that Rohit Sharma, the way he talked in his press conference really impressed me. He talked all about intent of the batsman, the intent to score runs, not to be bogged down. Now, when you look at the way some of the England batters batted, they looked as if they weren't necessarily trying to score runs, they were trying to survive. And that's a distinct way of looking at it. And Rohit Sharma, the way he batted, of course, getting 66 and being not out in the second innings, clearly showed that he had intent about his batting and was always looking to score runs. And that's the key to me. That really summed it up beautifully.
Well, any spinner, but even in my moderate level, Norman, if you're bowling at a static target, you can establish the length you want to bowl. And if Axer looked at the way he bowled to start with, he actually bowled a few loopy balls at Crawley, sort of a few things he could drive. And then he bowled. I think he went for 2 fours. One was a long half volley, and the next one was not a long off, just short, really, more than anything else. And it takes a bit of a while to work out the pace and the length that you have to bowl on a particular wicket. But if the batsman is confident in his ability to move around the crease and move up and down the wicket, that makes it really difficult for the bowler. The one thing about people forget about Axer, I know he's very experienced in other formats of the game. That was his debut. So he must have had some nerves at some stage, unless he's nervous. But the batsman knows it, and the people who can play spin are very. I've always thought, in terms of people playing short pitch, quick bowling, there is a courage, but it's a physical courage. I think there also is a courage of playing spin, in terms of being able to trust yourself to play shots that will take the battle to the bowler, knowing that if they don't work, you can look like a complete idiot. And it does. Some of our young players that I watch and see, I try to make that point to them. The highest level of spin you'll face, you won't get half volleys, full tosses, and whatever you might have had in other forms of cricket. You've got to have a way of playing that puts pressure on the batsman. And I'm sure that's the conversations that our guys have been talking about. They all have that ability. And I think I think they're really strong dressing room. I think they have a really strong spirit, and I'm sure that they'll help each other. And, and this is only half the number of people in the ground. Imagine what if there has been 110,000 there, and you've got the opposition. There's only you and your mate down the other end. So, so you've got to work together and rotate the strike. And if you're struggling a little bit, and they would have all taken those lessons. And I anticipate that they'll come out and perform very well, as will India. India will be very confident, but I'm sure that Ravi will prepare the team to not just take it for granted. They would expect England to bounce back.
I don't think Ravi's been given enough credit, actually. I think Ravi Shastri's still an unsung hero of this team. He's been there for quite some time now. His way of handling the team, his motivational approach, he's also letting go and getting the players to take charge, is incredible. I think he needs to be applauded for what he's done. I mean,
that's an old-fashioned dressing room led by captains, whether it be Rane in the last series at the end, or whether it be Kohli now. So, do you actually get to speak to Ravi at all or interview him?
No, we can't. We don't have access. I mean, message him from time to time, and we speak over messages and stuff like that. But
but if you do, give him my best, because we played against each other when he was playing for Glamorgan and I was playing for Gloucester.
I'll convey that. The other thing, as David mentioned, I'm not going to touch upon the footwork because he's already said enough about that. The other important thing for me, irrespective, which could be an Indian or an Englishman, but as a batsman, you've got to be fearless. You've got to, as David mentioned, you've got to trust yourself and clarity of thought. You can't be thinking about one ball which has turned I mean, it's like seam bowling, batting against seam bowling when you have no idea which one's coming in or going out. You play inside the line. You play because and just accept the fact that you will be beaten from time to time. There will be a delivery which turns and bounces. So just play inside the line. Make sure you're not pushing at the ball. Play inside your body. And if you get beaten, you get beaten. You can't do much about that. And if you see a ball which is there to be put away, just put it away. I mean, if it's a full toss, a step out, a sweep, whatever, that's your. I mean, every player has his own strength. So just back your strength, clarity of thought. That for me is very, very important because it's most of the players go out to the straighter one. One is obviously the pace that we mentioned before, and it's also because couple of balls they've turned and bounced, and as a batsman you're thinking, okay, this ball will bounce, this might turn, and you playing the wrong line. So just take it out of the system. Don't worry about the ball turning and bouncing, because 8 out of 10 times you'll be beaten. Anything which goes past your outside edge, right? It's the inside edge that you've got to be bothered about. So play inside the line, don't follow the ball, and hope for the best and trust yourself.
And also how you react to the spinning ball.
Yeah,
the opposition will look at how you physically react to it, and if you have a bit of a worry and say, how am I going to, or indicate that you're struggling to play it, you just got to as you say, put it behind you. Well, I used to think that when I was hit for 6, I used to tell the batsman, you don't get 12 for it if you hit it twice as far. So.
Interesting. I mean, the critical moments of the tests have been the Anderson over when he took those wickets. That was a pivotal moment of that particular test. Not unlike when Akshar Patel bowled that initial overs to take the early wickets. They're the critical moments that I see, especially when the likes of Bairstow had to come out to face the fire. That initial delivery, trying to sweep a ball at the first ball or playing for the spin when there was no spin. That's the critical moment. That sets the trend for the entire team that follows. And I can't stress that enough. If they survived the first few overs, they played with authority in the first few overs, that would have changed the England innings, especially the second. Don't you think? It's something that is very critical to the mindset.
I think the opposition can work out on a wicket that's responsive. And I think you don't have to say anything more than that. Whether somebody's got a plan or somebody has got panic, and the opposition can decide which one it is. So, but if they'd looked at footage, which I'm sure they did from Sri Lanka, England, Duncan Fletcher's belief was that actually you should never get stumped, because he taught all of his, and some of them did it really well, to sweep all the time. And again, actually there were a lot of people who were given out for missing sweeps in this match. But in past, actually, if you missed a sweep, you weren't given out in the UK. Sometimes some umpires said, well, I don't like the weak sweep shot, so if you miss it, I'll give you out. And that's county level. It's not international level. So, but it is a plan. Again, this thing of bravery, playing seam and spin, that actually you've got to generate the speed in terms of when you're playing spin. So you've got to have a plan. I'm saying that when you play seam, the number of balls that go to third man, particularly, I defy batsmen to tell me that they intended it, every single one, to go to third man. Hit the outside half of the bat. Whereas you don't have that speed to work with when you're facing spin. You've got to. But it's. But I think it'd be really good. I don't see England might not play as many seamers this time round. I don't see the Indian team changing. I don't know who comes in for Bumrah, Deep.
You already have Siraj there, and obviously Shant, and Umesh is there as well. So. Maybe one of them would play. I think Umesh might come in, might go with the same side, same combination, not the same side, but the same combination. I haven't seen the pitches yet. I'll go to the ground tomorrow. I'll have a look at the pitch. So I don't think it's going to be too different. The other thing is this pitch, irrespective whether it's dry enough for it to start turning from D1 or not, I don't know. But this red soil has more bounce than the red soil in Chennai. This is the soil is the same as the one in Wankhede in Mumbai. So that this particular red soil has a little more bounce. It's more bounce.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that would be good.
Yeah. So the Chennai red soil wasn't as quick as this, but this one, irrespective it's pink or red, would have more bounce in turn.
And David, I'm conscious of you. You need to get away at a certain time, David.
Yeah,
you mentioned it.
Yes.
Yeah. So look, I want to thank you for this time, guys. It's been absolutely wonderful. It's refreshing. I mean, I know Deep very well. I know David now very well. You're both complementing each other brilliantly. You've got great minds. And quite frankly, it's been a pleasure to have you both on my platform. And having been on yours, Deep, with Sports Today and Burry and the like, I've had so much fun. Now with David, I think we should cross-fertilise somewhat. I love to see David on Sports Today and have some sort of actions going on there. The reality is this has been wonderful. I really appreciate your time. And if you've got time in the future, Deep, we'd love to have you back on. Obviously, you're going to be flat out with your Star Sports commitment. I would love to have talked about that more too. But it's been an absolute pleasure. And you're a great friend. And I really love talking to you with Pragyan Orja and, of course, Borio as well. And it's been wonderful. So I've appreciated it.
Deep's got to get on with his home learning, Norman. Don't worry about that.
No, pleasure is mine. Absolutely, pleasure is mine, Norman, and obviously David. I mean, I've heard so much. This is the first time actually interacting with David, but obviously he's been part of the cricket setup for so long and has served the sport so well for so many years. So it's an absolute pleasure. Norman, what's the scene in Australia now? For a change, Australia does the Australians want England to win this Test match?
Well, Andrew McDonald today in the actual press conference said he was actually barracking for him.
So I've definitely got to go, Norman. If you're starting this subject, I'll let you answer the question. Bye, gentlemen.
All right. Well, yeah, we do want England to win, but I don't think so strongly like that. I like India, and I want it to be a fair contest. Does that sound good? All right, guys. Thank you very much, David. Thank you, David. Thank you deeply, Deep. I really appreciate it. So we had David to go now, but I wanted to finish, Deep, by telling you, you are an absolute pleasure on Star Sports. Everybody that's on my platform wanted you on this show, and I've got some very happy people here because you've been brilliant. You're the standout on that particular platform by a long way. Your voice is so easy to listen to, plus your knowledge is amazing. And thank you again. I really appreciate it. We'll talk soon more.
I appreciate that.
So Norman Kochnick here on Eyes on Cricket with Norman Kochnick. Thanks to Deep and David. We'll see each other very soon again, and I appreciate the time on this platform. Make sure you view, like, and share. Of course, leave comments as you have. We haven't gone through your questions today, as you know. It's been difficult because I've had such a great panel of both David and Deep. They've been fantastic, as you will acknowledge. I've been blessed to have them on. We'll have many more guests in the future. But again, view, like, and share. Make comment. Subscribe if you haven't already. Please make sure others subscribe, and let's grow this platform. And I'll bring more and more guests to you. Let me know who you want me to see or want to hear from. It's my pleasure to have you there. So it's Norman Kochnick on Eyes on Cricket with Norman Kochnick. Good night, everyone.